Hello. Thank you for tuning in to the Doty Report on Comprehensive Health. This is Yolanda Gibbons. I am your host, and this is actually our last show for this quarter. We've had some excellent guests. We've provided some great information, some great resources, and we are looking forward to coming back in April. But in the meantime, tonight, we appreciate you viewing. And we ask you to please feel free to call in if you have any questions. So, our last show for this quarter, I am very, very excited and very honored to have the one and only, the CEO and founder of the Georgia Doty organization, Mr. Don Doty.
Nice to meet you.
And he have with him his longtime colleague, and she is Beverly Walker. She is the president of the Westside Health Advocate Regional Planning Coalition, as well as the director of the health education for the Georgia Doty organization. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Our topic for today, we are going to be talking about the organization. We're going to be giving some history about the organization. We're going to talk about some of the activities that have happened in 2017 and previous, as well as provide you with some information about what you can look forward to the organization in 2018. So, with that being said, I am going to allow Mr. Doty to give the history of the organization.
Well, Georgia Doty and I, my mother, we're from Los Angeles, and she was the first minority to ever set up a allied health welfare to work post-secondary trade school. It made 60 minutes, and when we received a $2 million grant from the Department of Labor. When it made 60 minutes, Harold Washington, a congressman at the time, and W. Clement Stone provided me the opportunity to come to Chicago and duplicate our school here in Chicago, which was called the Center for Employment Training.
Okay. So so I'm reading the history that your mom was a pioneer in the healthcare industry as well as a philanthropic entrepreneur. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. She had many, many different businesses that all related to health. She had a health club.
Okay.
She had the first minority-owned respiratory therapy company where we actually brought the oxygen and the hydrogen to the various hospitals at the time before respiratory therapy was very popular at all. So she was quite entrepreneur, and she opened up a lot of doors for a lot of individuals that were starting off in small businesses in the health field.
Okay. So as I read your history, I see that you started off as the Georgia Doty Scholarship Fund. And at some point, that changed, and that changed for a reason. Can you share with the viewers what changed and how did this organization become with a strong focus on health?
Well, it started when I first came to Chicago. I was working with I was working at Malcolm X College, and at that time there was a scholarship program, and we were giving financial aid to minorities that were enrolled in school in nursing or in allied health. It went very well for quite a few years until I became director for marketing for United Healthcare. At that time, then I got hepatitis C, and when I realized that I had hepatitis C, the whole agenda and my goals and mission kind of rather changed in terms of dealing and educating others with an illness that I had. And at that time, I didn't know where it came from or what it was about. And later I found out that I got it serving the military in Vietnam. So I dedicated and changed the mission statement from a scholarship fund to an educational organization dealing with HIV and hepatitis.
Okay, so let's talk about what is hepatitis?
Hepatitis is a blood-to-blood viral disease. It is so easy to get, no matter how careful you are. Many of the guys, young men, are getting it from haircuts, from razor blades that have been used on clients prior to him getting a haircut. We're getting it from body tattoos and not getting tattoos in clinically sanitized, certified tattoo parlors. A lot of the guys are coming out of prison that are incarcerated. They're tattooing each other with ballpoint pens and getting hepatitis. And then again, there's a lot that did drugs. You might have did drugs 20 years ago intravenously, and that will raise the radar in terms of hepatitis in the minority community especially.
Okay. So what are there symptoms? Are there signs? How did you become to notice you had hepatitis?
Well, there are no symptoms. You might get a little tiredness, a little bit, but there's no symptoms at all. I had it for 50 years. I didn't realize that I had it for like the first 10 years. I think I was taking a trip. I donated blood to a blood bank, and I was going on vacation to Vegas, and I got a phone call saying that, Mr. Doty, the blood that would you come into the office when you return to Vegas? And I was wondering what's the matter, and they said, well, sir, your blood, you have hepatitis C. Well, at that time, it ruined my vacation, but it educated me to a point of what was hepatitis C. Was it HIV? Was it similar to HIV? So I had to do a lot of education. When I realized how accessible and how many veterans throughout the United States are infected, how many seniors are infected and don't know it, I changed my mission to deal with health education.
Okay. Okay, so you are watching the Georgia Doty, the Doty Report, and we are here with Mr. Don Doty himself and his professional colleague, Miss Beverly Walker. We are talking about the history of the organization. We're talking about educating the community. We're talking about hepatitis C. We're talking about the need to educate veterans and seniors. So feel free to call in with any questions that you have. So, how does the education piece? What are you educating the community on as it relates to
Well, we deal with health disparity across the board, but just HIV and hepatitis right now in the minority community is more prevalent. And when we went into the prisons, I think Beverly can kind of speak on that subject because she's more educated and a specialist in the area of HIV.
Okay.
My focus is Hep C, but they are kissing cousins because if you have HIV, it's more prevalent that you'll have also hepatitis, not the other way around. So meeting with Beverly really put together a really comprehensive package of education in terms of dealing with both their health issues.
So Ms. Beverly, when he said kissing cousins, what does that mean?
Well, what he means is that it's as easy to get one illness as it is to become infected with the other.
Okay.
If a person has become infected with hepatitis, they've shared some blood-to-blood contact. That is also a way that you can become positive for HIV infection. So that's what he means by kissing cousins. There are a lot of other illnesses that a person can get, and they have co-infection. So if they're infected with one illness, they become more prone to become infected because of the behavior. Okay. Especially if it's using drug paraphernalia to use do drugs intravenously. In addition to that, that's also a way that you can become infected, as I said before. But the other thing is that the behavior that you engage in causes you to become infected.
Okay. So when I first started working with you guys, the focus of hepatitis C and HIV and AIDS, and with the focus being on veterans and seniors, even surprised me. So I'm just want to ask about that. You know, when you think about seniors, you definitely don't think about HIV and AIDS. I mean, that didn't come to mind. But then at the same time, I started to think back when we first were told about HIV and AIDS, and I guess that population of people, I guess, are now older. We'll talk about that because that was really shocking to me.
Well,
like, we're educating seniors on HIV and AIDS. So,
well, what happened was it became very prevalent between 1961 and 1974 for hepatitis.
okay.
At that time, then there was no detection. There was no studies, no research done on it. And at that time, then, for the military is concerned, the air gun that was used on us was faulty, and where they were shooting everybody with the air gun, everybody's blood was backing up into that air gun as you went down the line. And so many of us got it from the air gun, and when we got our vaccination to go overseas. That's how I got it. And so did very many thousands of others. A lot during that time, many seniors during the time of the 61 and 74 were in the hospital for blood transfusion, dental care, any of that type of blood kind of transferring process, and they were at risk. That's why everybody that was born or lived between 61 and 74 who at any time been in the hospital, at any time had a body tattoo, at any time during that process, put them at risk for hepatitis C.
Okay.
And right now, I have to say that women right now are very highly at risk for hepatitis and HIV for many different factors. But right now, it's really high in the heterosexual female population now.
Okay. Okay. And so, Ms. Berry, what about this thing with seniors and HIV and AIDS and the need to really educate them?
Well, most people don't think that seniors are still active. Nowadays,
Right.
the senior, a while back when you talked about seniors, you were talking about a person that was basically retired.
Mm-hmm.
But now that the age is 50 and older or 55 and older or whatever, people are still sexually active.
Right.
People will have sex. It's just a normal body need, and people still engage in those activities. However, when they engage in those activities and do not protect themselves by using condoms, then that's how they can become infected if another person is infected.
Okay.
But
And
what-
because they're engaging in unprotected sex, puts them at risk for the infection, and it makes them more vulnerable. So that population becomes interesting simply because a lot of times when people are educating, they don't go to the seniors.
Right.
Seniors they're at home, they're cooking, they're watching the kids or whatever. So they don't go to them. They go to church on Sunday, they come back home, they go to the movies, they come back home or whatever. So they don't really see a lot of times the need to use condoms. And a lot of people say, well, I've never used condoms, why should I start using them now?
Mm-hmm.
Simply because the numbers have lowered for HIV infection for Hispanics, and all other community populations, targeted populations, but not for African Americans. African Americans are still highly impacted by HIV infection. And so that makes them more vulnerable, and you have to, so what the Doty program does is take the education to the facility to educate those individuals, to make sure that they get the information so that they can begin to take care of themselves and become more healthy.
Okay.
And that's it.
And another factor that a lot of seniors are affected with HIV and hepatitis, or HIV specifically, and hepatitis, is that a lot of the senior males are having sex with outside prostitutes, and they're bringing it back to the senior females in the facilities. So I think that 70% is based on the male seniors, and then on the first of the month when they get paid. And then, yeah,
So funny.
and they, no, that's true, and they go back and they have sex within the senior facilities, and they're passing it on. And you have to think back, in Chicago is an interesting city. In the 60s and the 70s, the drug rate here in Chicago was very high, especially heroin and anything that deal with invasive treatment in terms of needles. And so if a person did drugs 20, 30 years ago, he's still infected with HIV or hepatitis. And so it's there within the system, and then it passes on. So a lot of the people, behavior or life behavior when they were younger is now catching up with them.
Okay.
Yeah, a person that has hepatitis C, you may have a person that has hepatitis C, and they could have been infected for 20, 30 years and not even know.
Right.
Simply because a lot of times the symptoms that you have for a cold, pneumonia, HIV, hepatitis are the same symptoms that you have for many other illnesses. You get real, but there are some differences. So if you start having night sweats really, really bad, where you got to change your bed sheets and so forth, then it should alert you that something more drastic is wrong, and you should go to the doctor and be tested. But when you go to they have these programs where when you go to the hospital, they should ask you if you want to be tested for HIV. If you don't ask, then if they don't ask you, a lot of people don't think to say, oh, and make sure you test my blood for HIV infection or hepatitis. So they don't think about that, and they don't get the test. But one of the things that we try to do with the health department and many community programs is to make sure that when we're out in the community doing the outreach, that those people that we ask them if they would like to be tested. A lot of people don't even want to know what their results are because they probably just can't think or imagine living with some infection like that. but HIV is not a death sentence at this point.
Okay.
You know, there are a lot of new medications that are out that you can take. There's a lot of literature that's out that you can read on, you know, to find out about it. And so now one of the things that the city Department of Health and the Illinois Department of Public Health is trying to do is to make sure that we can get to zero. And by getting to zero, it absolutely means that we have no new infections on a regular, consistent basis. Like the point where they started using AZT for HIV infection as a medication. If a woman is pregnant and she's HIV positive and she takes this medication and goes to her doctor appointments and so forth, then the chances of that baby being born HIV infected is very, very low.
Okay.
Tell me about PrEP.
PrEP is a medication. It's called Truvada. It's packaged by Gilead Pharmaceutical Company, and if a person engages in risky behavior, if they're having sex with someone and they're not using protection, or they may be out using drugs and become infected, PrEP is a medication where you can take this pill on a daily basis in order to not become infected with HIV.
If your partner is infected.
And you have to have consistent visits with the doctor to make sure that they're keeping it. You have to be tested on a regular basis, have consistent appointments with the doctor to make sure that all your levels are okay and that they're keeping constant check on you. If for some reason you engage in sexual activity and not use protection, you need to let the doctor know immediately. And there are several community-based programs in Chicago that are actually using this medication now for their clients. If they're a lot of times, and they use this word high risk, which, you know, so they got some issues with some of the wording that they use because people don't like to be put in categories and labeled.
Right.
But basically, if you're in a situation and you know a person is positive, you don't want to become positive. You need to go see the doctor. You need to make sure that you're trying to get the medication, and it's called PrEP.
PrEP. Okay, that's I first time learned something. Again, you are watching the Doty Report on Comprehensive Health. We are here with Mr. Don Doty himself, as well as Miss Beverly Walker. Please, we're talking about hepatitis C. We're talking about HIV/AIDS. We're talking about the great work, the history, and the legacy of this organization. So feel free to call in with any questions that you may have. So, Mr. Doty, I heard you say that you lived with hepatitis C
50 years.
for 50 years, so it's curable.
It's curable. The VA has a new drug. One drug is from Merck, which is called I can't think of the name of it for Merck. One is called Zepotar from Gilead, and Merck has a product out also that's dealing with hepatitis C.
Okay.
So it definitely is curable. I think I take a shot once a week for 8 weeks, and it cleared it up.
Oh.
And I was so blessed. I was so blessed because living with it was a constant life change in terms of your eating, your resting. Having something itself that you don't know if you can ever cure it, or if there's ever going to be a cure, was something I had to live with for many, many years. And I feel more so empowered to go out and educate other folks. I mean, women are getting it now from getting their nails done, and the nail and the equipment is not sanitized, used on another patient, another client. There's so many factors that people are at risk for it, they take for granted.
Right.
And you can't just get a test at a doctor's office. You have to specifically ask for a Hep C test, which is separate than a general blood test or an examination. And people have to realize that, and you can pass it on to your children through pregnancy.
Oh, wow. I think that's very, very important because we do go to the doctor. We have these routine visits, it's routine blood work, and most people think, they don't get any, everything is fine. But you're saying you need to definitely make sure that you're asking
You're asking for the
that you
test.
are tested for HIV/AIDS. I know my doctor always asks that, and for hepatitis.
I think women have to be more focused. I kind of put it on them to an extent because they have to really research and ask questions on people who they're meeting. They're not meeting like back in the 60s and the 70s. A gentleman could have did drugs 30 years ago. You would never have known it. You would never have asked him, did you
Right.
ever do drugs?
Right.
And all of a sudden, the women are getting hepatitis C by not asking. Guys are coming out of prison with different infection viruses, and they do not want to use a condom. And they don't want to use a condom, and they're going to convince or talk the women out of it. And it's the women that have to be able to be tough and strong and to be able to do their homework and research. So everybody has to learn from each other. But,
Right.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this great work this organization has been doing for years. Tell our viewers about the organization and the work.
Well, we deal with health disparity across the board. We deal with domestic violence, prostate cancer, breast cancer, any disparity that affects minorities per se. So we're changing the name. We were the Georgia Doty HIV and Hepatitis Community Outreach. That was our branding for about 25 years. But now it's so broad now in terms of the issues that need to be discussed and to educate the public on obesity, nutrition, and lupus, and you could name about 20 different illnesses that are affecting minorities, the highest that we need to be educated to be able to go on. I think that with Beverly, when she came into the prisons, it was shocking to a lot of the inmates to understand of their health and their behavior and about HIV and about hepatitis. And drugs in the prison is very prevalent, even is prevalent today. And so it was a blessing for me to run into Beverly that really gave me a lot of education because I knew nothing about hepatitis, about HIV.
Okay.
So working as a team, they called us my yin to my yang, and we were Batman and Robin. So we did very well
I love it.
throughout the prisons and the inmates, yes.
You guys are still
Okay.
Batman and Robin, yin and yang.
I'm right.
I love it. I'm
Thelma and
joining
Louise.
in on these two pros over here.
Three
So,
Musketeers,
right. I really love it. So how we talk about the health disparities in the African American community. Is the resources not there, or is our communities not accessing?
Beverly, you want to start?
Well, you have a lot of people who just don't know how to find resources.
Right.
You know, I mean,
That's
and a
true.
lot of the
That is
changes
true.
that you go through when you're trying to get the resources,
is-
you know, you become exhausted.
Yeah,
You know, just think if a senior is trying to get her, we just had the 15th go by, and people had to change their medical care. So, you know, I mean, a lot of the resources that you run into they're good resources, but it's taxing. And it's hard for a person to really just go out and do it. You have a lot of people that are introverted, not extroverted. And so they just don't know how to look for those services or don't know how to advocate for the services that they need.
Until they're exposed and they have it.
Right. And so
somebody in the family.
then they go to somebody else to ask questions because when you have various illnesses, it's you know, cancer, people don't tell, HIV, people don't tell, hepatitis, people don't want to tell, you know, some other things because of the stigma. You know, the stigma is such a big issue with a lot of these health illnesses until people don't want to be stigmatized.
Right.
You know, and so they just stop looking for the resources. But the one thing that we did, we were able to go into the adult transitional facilities, which were more or less like the work release programs.
Okay.
And we went into 4 different facilities in Chicago area, and we would educate them. I would do the education, and after 4 weeks of the education, each week we would talk about a different subject. And at the end of the month, we would have a graduation. And those individuals who were really, really interested came out with some information, some knowledge that they didn't have before. And we tried to help them, assist them to find employment as well. Some of them was able to work with me in the program that I had doing community outreach. Where they were going out in the community, passing the information out to people, talking to people about it, trying to encourage people to use condoms and to go, you know, and advocate for themselves regarding health issues. And it worked out really, really well.
They
A-
became peer
after-
educators.
Peer,
Okay.
yeah, peer
Okay.
educators.
Nice.
And after that program, you know, we went back again and did another round, you know, until the money, we was funded by Illinois Department of Public Health. When the money ran out,
Yeah.
then we couldn't go back into the
Right.
facilities. But it was a really, really good program. And the ones who were in the facilities who did not have a job to go out and look for, or who were not in some program in the daytime, those are the ones that were in our program.
Okay.
And it was really creative because people don't realize how much talent is in that prison. I mean, you think of inmates, you don't think of the educated
Right.
individuals who make mistakes, bad choices.
wrap up.
And these guys would write poetry on hepatitis. They had some beautiful poetry and rap music on it. So I was really pleased with some of the responses we did get from the inmates while they were inside incarcerated.
Okay, so this is the Doty report on comprehensive health. It is just about time for us to wrap up. Come on, we got to tell our viewers something good that's happening with Georgia Doty in 2018. Come on.
Well, now we had a new grant, and we have to reach 1,000 veterans and 500 seniors to educate them on hepatitis and provide testing for them. So we're going to work with Southside Health Center and Haymarket to come out and to do actual testing for as many facilities and as many individuals as we possibly can. We're expanding our operation to Atlanta, LA, and Las Vegas.
National.
So we're going national
Yes.
now, yes. And because of the success we have and because of the prevalence of this issue all throughout the country, they find that our program is very effective and they want to share it.
Sound great. Any final words, Ms. Beverly?
Yes, I would love to see us get to zero, where we have zero infections regarding HIV and zero infections where we have where hepatitis is concerned.
Got you. So, this is our last show for this particular quarter. We will be back April 2018. We want to thank all of our viewers for watching us every Tuesday at 6 o'clock. We do hope that we have been able to inform, educate, provide you with resources. We thank you for those that called in over the past several weeks. We thank all of our guests. And for more information about the Georgia Doty organization, you can call 312-282-1375 or email the Doty Report at gmail.com. Thank you. It's
Thank
been
you.
my honor to be with these legends in the health education field, right? These professionals. I'm joining them. Again, I am Yolanda Givens. This is Mr. Don Doty, and this is Miss Beverly Walker, and we thank you for tuning in this evening.